This is Camille Gerard for Tech 1010 talking about lessons learned from the Challenger explosion. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you, and then you'll be able to follow along with this presentation. What could NASA have done differently? The Challenger explosion wasn't just a result of technical equipment failure. In addition to the design flaws that triggered the actual explosion, there's a second system that failed: the organizational structure of NASA. In this scenario, management was able to simply override the recommendations made by trained professionals at several turns. Additionally, the culture of NASA created an environment that allowed management to be persuaded to go against recommendations made by the engineers in order to meet deadlines. This could have been resolved with additional checks and balances made to the organizational structure, especially when human lives are at risk. Tying into this idea of checks and balances, NASA should have had a better system of risk assessment and safety protocols set up for an event like this. When a major flaw, like the failure of the O-rings in the Challenger booster rockets, was discovered, there should have been safety protocols and a full risk assessment policy implemented right away. For example, if critical components to the safety of the crew are discovered, an inquiry should be launched with a formal risk assessment to determine if the mission should continue. If you reach higher than a certain level of risk to the safety of the crew, the mission should automatically be halted. Additionally, management also could have given more weight to the engineers' recommendations. If those with advanced technical knowledge of the situation believe there is a high risk of danger or death to the crew, that information should hold more weight than arbitrary decisions reached by managers with little technical knowledge of the subject. Another point that I thought was very relevant: slow down and request more data. As soon as that late night conference call was held and it became obvious that there was serious risk involved for the crew if the launch proceeded as scheduled, the managers should have made the decision to delay the launch and gather more data. If there is a high risk of physical harm or death to real people involved in a mission, it is the decision maker's responsibility to put the brakes on and request more time to gather data. Improved communication. Again, this ties into all the previous points, but improved communication between different levels, from the contractors up through management, could have prevented this disaster. Thiokol was aware of a potentially dangerous issue with the O-rings years before the Challenger explosion. Although the information was communicated with NASA, nothing was really done to resolve the issue until it was too late. What should Roger Boyce-Jolly have done differently, if anything? Realistically, I don't know if there was much more that Roger Boyce-Jolly could have done to prevent the tragedy of the Challenger explosion. From a legal standpoint, I think he did the right thing by voicing his concerns and refusing to sign off on the final engineering recommendation. His true recommendations were ignored by management, who had the final decision in this case. If it had been up to Boyce-Jolly, the launch would have been delayed and the accident likely would have been avoided. What do you see as your future engineering professional responsibilities in relation to both being loyal to management and protecting the public welfare? First of all, I think that different standards should apply when you're discussing safety of real people versus company equipment and assets. There should definitely be stricter standards when human lives and the public are at risk. One practical lesson to learn from this event is that you should always document your recommendations and don't sign off on things you disagree with if you are pressured to do so, especially if you feel it will put human lives or the public at risk. If your recommendations are ignored and the stakes are high, look into whistleblower hotlines for your company. Many large organizations offer resources like a whistleblower hotline, and many government agencies in charge with regulating dangerous industries also offer anonymous whistleblower hotlines. And if it really comes down to it, I think you're much better off participating in something like that rather than going through with something that would put your potential career and future in jeopardy due to poor management decisions that go above your head. Also, along with that, as a future engineer or professional, I think it's our responsibility to also represent the interests of the company when possible. Sometimes it's easy to get focused in on the regulatory standards or the letter of the law, when really we can afford to be flexible when it is reasonable and when the stakes are not too high to help represent the interests of the company.